Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test.
I think we're live now. Yes. Hey, folks, we're back. Yeah, this is behind the scenes of AV Rant. We're looking befuddled because it's been a while and some things have changed. So, but yeah, you are being warned that this is the behind the scenes version. This is just our live chat as Tom and I talk to one another. So if there are any technical issues, they'll show up in this version. There's a completed version that goes up
Test. 1,
later
2.
in the week. Yeah, it's got times in the show notes and for certain cleaned up audio. This has been your warning. All right. I think that's good. It says we're streaming.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hold on a second here. Why are you so loud? I need this to be louder.
Well, in Skype,
so I can...
right?
Yeah, I don't understand why Skype is
well,
like
there's
a
separate
bajillion.
Skype settings, right? Can you?
There's too many Skype windows. They won't go away.
I know. It's the Windows version of Skype. They're like, you're in Skype in Windows? You want to see us everywhere, right? Everywhere, no matter what you're doing? Audio video settings. Yeah, you can turn your speakers down in Skype. I don't know if that does it. No, it doesn't do it system-wide because mine's all the way up at 10 and the rest isn't.
All right, let me turn this up a little bit now.
Yeah.
But it sounds staticky when I do that.
Oh.
Like you sound staticky.
Well, that might just be your headphone output, though.
My what?
Your headphone output.
No, it's going through an external
jack.
Oh,
external jack. Okay. I
don't know. All right. I actually can hear me, too, as I do that. So
okay.
I don't know what's happening there. Hold on a second. I think that might be on this side. Yeah. Test that. Does that fix it? Yeah, that fixes it. Okay.
I don't know what fixes what all.
All right. I do have to turn you down.
Okay.
You're too loud still.
That's okay.
Okay. And let me close this. Go away, Skype. You suck. Go away, Skype.
It's true.
Oh, it's dynamically changing my volume for you.
Ah.
How do I turn that off?
Dynamically changing
automatically adjust.
It should.
Yeah, that automatically adjust microphone settings.
Yeah, well, that's you.
Turn that off.
that for sure.
That's why I said it's changing the volume for you.
No, but it's dynamically changing your microphone. It should my volume. I can do that on my end.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Blur my background. Why do I look funny? Oh, whatever. What is everything?
Why is my streaming bandwidth looking crappy? Shouldn't be.
I don't know, but you just got garbled on me.
I know. It's going back up to green, so... God. Always with us. Anyway.
Yep.
It should be good. Oh, wait. Now you're frozen.
Oh, there you go. Oh, that was bad.
What are you doing over there? Hello?
Are you back?
I don't know. What are you doing over there? Things are going nuts on your Skype.
That's...
I think you're back. You're moving on my screen again anyway.
Well, you've been saying nothing but shh for like the last 10 seconds.
Should we try a new Skype call? Oh, man.
Interesting.
You're just completely frozen.
I think so.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to hang up on you and call back. I hope this works in the thing. Oh, Lordy. I hope this works in OBS. Hold on here. Why is my streaming thingy so bad? Okay, let's try this again. Hold on. You know what? Let's do a full quit and reopen. There we go. Only behind the scenes will you get stuff like this. All right, here we go. Da da da. Da da ba 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 ba. Tom is not online. Wow, that's just super. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Okay, here we go. It's ringing. Okay.
Why the one line?
There you go. There's something. Yeah, we're looking good. We better go while the getting's good.
Okay, let's restart the audio.
Oh, restart the audio? Okay.
Yeah, restart the audio. I had to delete mine so I could. I'm echoey again. Where's that
Well,
coming
you're not
from?
echoey on my end.
No, I can hear myself though. It's going to be distracting. Why am I hearing myself? Test.
Oh God. I mean, that's going to be a just output setting to your output device.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking for it right now.
Oh, changing settings while streaming.
Test. That should be good. Except now my master volume isn't doing anything.
Well, if it's not bad, just leave it alone.
I need it. Okay, testing 1, 2.
Oh,
yeah, okay, that looks okay.
Okay.
All right, dude. You know what? Worst things have happened.
It's
here.
true.
Go back this way. All right,
Okay.
ready.
In a 1, 2, 3, record.
1, 2, 3.
Pop. Aight.
All right, let's start.
Streaming still going. What a stream. Okay. Off you go.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. Welcome to AV Rant. It's Tom is back. I'm surprised.
Weird pause, but okay.
Yeah, AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Hey, it's episode 707, and we're recording this on 707 of the year 2020. So, yeah. But main thing is that Tom is back. He's been away for 2 weeks. Very large thanks to Lee Overstreet for being our guest co-host while Tom was away. That's much appreciated. And
recognize that name.
Yeah, Tom has to regale us with the story now.
Oh, it's too long.
Yeah, I know.
The too long didn't read version is when they told us that we were going to have to leave for a couple of days, because they had found a little bit of mold underneath our kitchen cabinets. That went from we're going to have to replace these cabinets, replace just those cabinets, to we're going to have to replace your entire countertops because it's gone beyond that, to we're going to have to replace all your cabinets, to we might have to replace your ceiling.
Wow. Okay. Got all the way up there. Last I heard it was your upper cabinets. So.
Yeah, all the way to the ceiling. So, yeah. So we're still waiting. But we got kicked out of the house for, almost 2 weeks completely. And then, while COVID numbers are spiking in Florida, what was I doing? Staying at Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Because that's what
Perfect.
you do. That's what you do when you want to stay safe. Yeah, the only guy who goes to the beach masked, the only family that goes beach masked. Because one of the houses we stayed at was like on the beach, and it was right before the 4th of July. And my wife was like, "We've got to get out of here. It's going to be like COVID central this weekend when 4th of July hits." So it was a little stressful. So as of right now, I should be good for at least this week. Clearly,
okay.
Probably next week, almost certainly the week after that.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm going to get kicked out again. So because they have to take everything out, they're going to basically it's going to be a complete demolish from floor to ceiling, which is, it's a lot of people look like, oh my God, you're getting a almost brand new kitchen. Well, it will be brand new to us, kitchen for, the low price of all the insurance fees you've ever spent over the course of your lifetime, which is nice. It could happen at any time other than right now, and it would be so much better. But it's very stressful. So we're gonna have to leave as they pull out all the kitchen cabinets, pull down the ceiling, replace everything, wait for countertops to come in, replace those, install everything. So they said that process, depending on how well they can time it and everything else, could be a week. It could be probably 2. It might maybe be 3. So if we end up in an Airbnb where I can actually stream, because the last 2 places we were at, I could not for reasons. If there is a place I can actually stream, then I will do it. But if I can't, then we'll have to get somebody else in here. Or whatever. I don't know.
So on
We'll
top
see.
of all that,
Just won't take any questions.
Tom also got a new computer, now using Windows. We thought that a new
Now using Windows.
speedy computer would solve things, but looks like we're still having Skype and OBS issues between the two of us. So I don't know if it's my computer didn't have problems the other times, but I think Skype just hates us, Tom. I think that's what goes on there.
Did you get the aspect ratio fixed? We could zoom.
Well, we could try something. I don't know how to bring that into OBS yet, but I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I crop you anyway, so how your aspect ratio comes in doesn't really matter. But yeah, it's good times.
My
Technical stuff.
colors are odd, though. I noticed that.
Don't change anything. At the
not changing anything.
moment,
Shut up,
it's
Rob.
kind of working. Okay. Well, anyway, we are back. Hopefully, this stream is working. So far, kind of okay. Been a few glitches at the beginning. But yeah, we're here to answer your home theater and AV questions. Yeah. That's what
All
we
right.
do.
If you want to get, well, I guess we should start off with the call sign. It's been a while since I've done this. Let me see if I can remember. Yeah, this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. That is the primary and sometimes only way to get your question onto this podcast. You can also contact us in other ways by going to avrant.com, leaving us a comment there, facebook.com/avrant podcast, youtube.com/avrant. You can come to contact us directly. Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. But seriously, like for real, the AV Rant, the question at avrant.com is the way you want to go.
It is indeed.
Oh, and if you want to contact me directly, do not, because I have not been able to migrate my mail and all the different accounts from my Mac over to my PC yet, and it's like something I'm dreading because there's like 5 different accounts and all sorts of different mailbox things I've set up, and I'm like trying to figure out how to do this migration without it breaking the entire world, and emails are just stacking up. I went in there, I think I had 700 unread emails from just 2 different accounts. Just the AV Rant and the Tom at Tom Andry account are both overflowing with love. So I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you have to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to patreon.com/AVRant podcast. It's a sign up for a continuing subscription, an ongoing support pledge to our podcast, a monthly support that the Patreon will take from you and give most of it to us. So we want to thank our 121 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yes, indeed. People heard our plea to get us back over 120. So patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. And we're up to 121 patrons over there. So thank you very much, everyone, for the support. Anyone who'd like to make a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal. Come to our website, avrant.com, and on the right-hand side, it says support AVRant, and that will take you to PayPal, where you can use a credit card or your PayPal account.
There you go. We want to thank get some notes of gratitude for some of our listeners from John, Luke, Dan, and Tate for keeping the podcast going, even though, or maybe especially because I wasn't there.
No, definitely had people saying they were missing you and happy that you're back. So John, Luke, Dan, and Tate appreciate the notes of gratitude, because it's very nice to read that and know that people are appreciating the effort that goes into keeping this podcast going. So that is very nice to read. And thank you to everyone who continues to listen and send us questions, because there's no show without that. So that's awesome. And thank you.
I will tell you that one of the things that obviously we've had workers coming in and out of our house for the last months, forever it feels like, and I've been extremely careful, wiping everything down after they leave, making everybody, including the workers, wear masks while they're inside my house. All the kids are wearing masks. Nobody is running around, licking things. But we did get a call that one of the workers who was in our home did test positive for COVID. The last time he was in my house was the 15th of June. Okay. It's now July.
Yes.
Those of you that don't know, listening to this in the far future. So it's been over 14 days since he's been here. And the last time he worked with any of his fellow workers was the 17th.
Okay.
Everybody is getting tested. My entire family will get tested. All the workers and everybody else is getting tested. And it seems like if we would have got it, we would have had it by now. But that's the sort of thing. That's the sort of stress things that are going on. Like I tell people the very rare time that I get to talk to people outside my own home, I'm like, one of the nice things about, regardless of how you feel about face masks or anything else, when you go out, it's stressful. When you come home, you get to relax.
Yeah.
That hasn't been the case here.
Right.
For months.
Yeah.
You come home and there's people closer to you in your own home
Right. Yeah.
than there are at the
When you go to
grocery
the
store
store.
sometimes. Yeah. So, wearing masks constantly. There may be a hoarder show about me and face masks because I just can't stop ordering them. I've ordered tons. People suggested face masks. I want to thank everybody who did. Many of your emails that helped me with that got lost in the many, many stressful things that were going on around here and all the moving around and stuff that I did. But I did read them and I did take a look at them. I have ordered many different types of masks. I found some that I really like. So, things are going okay there. But not feeling safe in your own home is probably the worst part of this whole thing.
Yeah,
fact that it's not going to stop. I would be surprised if the kitchen alone was done by the end of August. I would be surprised if the kitchen alone was done by the end of August. So the home theater bathroom's fixed though. So there's that.
At least you can stay in the home theater.
Now I can lock my door. You guys can't come back here no more. All right, let's get some news in here. Some prices, some of our favorite amplifiers have increased. The Monolith monoprice amps, which are some of our favorites because they say monolith, and it reminds me of 2001: A Space Odyssey. They've increased. The 2x200 goes from 1,000 to 1,100. The 3x200 goes from 1,100 to 1,250. The 5x200 goes from $1,300 to $1,500, and the 7x200 goes from $1,600 to $1,730. So all of you people who went down the rabbit hole and thought, oh, all I need is a 2-channel, $100 Dayton audio amp, and ended up at Monolith, you can now look back and say, boy, I wish I would have not listened to Rob and Tom and actually gotten the Monolith before the prices increased by a marginal amount. There's also a 9-channel 3x200 and a 6x100 that remains at $2,000, and the 11-channel 3x200 8x100 watts remains at $2,500. So let's see here. If you want to compare them to Emotiva's amps, the 2x300 goes for $1,000. So that's 2x200 for Monolith goes for $1,100 now.
That's right. So the 2x300 is more price effective over at Emotiva right now.
The 3x2 27. Okay.
270.
Yeah, I was gonna say 27.5. I'm like, well, okay. Coffee hasn't kicked in, Rob.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of thinking to myself, it's mostly plug and play. I could probably just plug this camera in and plug the mic in and everything will work.
Switching operating systems is no trivial task.
3x275 for $1,200 as opposed to 3x200 for $1,250. So more price effective there.
Yep.
5x250 for $1,600. Now wait a second here.
Yes.
The 5x200 goes for $1,500. So
yep,
a little less power, a little less money.
That's right.
And the 7x200 from Emotiva goes for $2,000, and the 7x200 from Monoprice goes for $1,730. So
that's right.
So if you're looking for fewer channels with more power, it looks like Emotiva is the way to go. And if you're looking for a more power or
more
or
channels, more channels, but a little bit lower cost than the monoliths, still come out on top. Emotiva does have 9 and 11 channel models too, except that their lower power stereo modules are only 65 watts per channel instead of 100 watts per channel like the monoliths are. But their 11 channel version is only $2,000 over at Emotiva versus $2,500 for the monolith. So it makes them closer to price parity between the two companies. Both are American made. The Emotivas are manufactured in North America, as are the monoliths, which are made by ATI. So pretty darn close to even keeled in prices now.
Sweet. Let's see here. Outlaw Audio has discontinued the $600 Model 5000. It's 5x120 watts, and replaced it with a $750 Model 5000X. Ooh, it must be better. If it was only the i5000X, then it'd be super better. So the 5000X has both RCA and XLR inputs. Ooh, I have to scroll this to the side here somehow. What's going on? How come it won't scroll? Oh, there it goes. Because I don't.
You got to push up instead of down on Windows.
The pad is different than from the Mac because they've trained me for so long. The 500X has XLR and RCA inputs. It's still 5x120, and the model 7000X. it's a 7 by 130 watts RCA and XLR inputs, gets a very small price increase from $950 to $980.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Little bit
Must
of
be
copper price went up there or something.
I was gonna say somebody decided to actually gold plate something.
But yeah, so I mean, it's nice actually. I think that there is a 5-channel model from Outlaw now with XLR inputs because there's really no competition for that from anybody right now at a quite affordable price with both RCA and XLR because Emotiva has their Bass X or Tom's favorite Bass X series, which is a little bit less expensive for their 5 by 80 watt model, which is what you'd be getting. So it's lower wattage and lower price, but RCA inputs only. So if you're one of the people who's grabbing like Monoprice's HTP1 processor with its 15 speaker channels, all of which are XLR only, they don't have any RCA outputs on that processor, if you want to save some money on the amplifier, you get 3 of the 5,000 X's from Outlaw, would still be more cost effective.
Yeah. That's actually a pretty good price for a 5-channel amp. And 120 watts is more, 130, was it 120 for the...
Yeah, the Model 5000 is 120 watts by 5, but that's all channels driven simultaneously.
Yeah. Yeah, or as people on the internet like to say, those are real watts. Not the fake ones. Fake news. Andrew says the new versatile video coding, or VVC, or H.266 codec standard has been finalized, setting the stage for the battle between VVC and AV1 codecs. Everybody's so excited about that. We can all be excited about that. Look how excited. VVC promises 50% bandwidth savings over HEVC, which is the H.265, not the 266. But having been created and patented by the MPEG and Video Coding Experts Group, there are licensing and royalty fees to be paid. AV1, by comparison, saves roughly 30% in bandwidth compared to HEVC, or VP9, which is AV1's predecessor, but is royalty-free. Apple and Microsoft are backing both codecs, but Google and Netflix have chosen AV1. AV1 is also ahead in deployment, as chips that support VVC won't be here until the fall. Dude, free always beats it. It doesn't matter that it's only 30% savings over 50% savings in bandwidth. Free beats it.
I mean, we had HEVC, H.265, which had licenses and royalties, versus VP9, which was royalty-free, but VP9 arrived significantly later. So that allowed H.265 to get a real foothold for 4K streaming, which is pretty much what we're using now, except on YouTube. Of course, Google was the major backer of VP9, and they're using that on YouTube, but almost everything else uses HEVC for 4K streaming. But now that we're moving on to VVC versus AV1, AV1 has come out ahead. It's royalty-free, but not quite as, bandwidth savings. So, yeah, there's going to be decisions to be made there, and since Google and Netflix are backing AV1, I think we're going to be seeing that for a while. Apple is backing both, which is unusual for them. So, yeah, that's what's happening.
All right. Some comments here. Mike, Dan, and Andrew wanted to mention some specific titles to show off Atmos and DTS:X effects. Overlord? Is that? What movie is that?
Isn't that a horror movie?
Is that the one where they're like...
Oh, is that
like a war thing?
Is that the one where it's right? it's like zombie Nazis, I think? It is.
I think
that's
so
the one.
Too.
That's the one.
Yeah. I started watching that one night and then got distracted by something else and stopped, and I never finished it. So maybe it's.
But apparently, it has good overhead effects in immersive audio.
Pacific Rim Uprising, which, if you absolutely have to watch a movie, this is in fact a movie that has been made that can be watched by people.
The first Pacific Rim was pretty darn good and had some good sound effects, but yeah, the sequel.
It was fun.
Yeah, the sequel, Uprising, not in the same category as a movie. I don't doubt that its overhead effects are impressive. I don't doubt that.
I will never find out. I will never experience it. It's not going to happen. And Independence Day, which I guess is the remake, or
it's
the original.
It's recently released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, which is why with a new I think it's DTS:X mix. I think.
Okay. Hamilton sounded really good in Atmos.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little later when we get to that.
Are we
question,
good? Okay, we'll get to that. All right, Gurinder has a picture of an amp, I guess. So he received and installed an SVS Sledge 1200 amp in his PB13 Ultra subwoofer after his original Sledge 1000 amp died. Something we hadn't mentioned before is that the Sledge 1200 doesn't have any physical controls on it, since the 4000 series subs have a separate front panel control. So his only option for controlling his sub now is his app for his phone. Thankfully, it works like a treat, and physically swapping the amps was quite easy. And since once you set your subwoofer, you never, ever, 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 ever have to touch it again. I would very much prefer if there weren't any knobs on mine, because my one back of my mind thing is like, somebody might have touched something. I might have touched something. Who knows? You know, a house gecko, we call them house geckos, the lizards from outside that come inside. House gecko could have like landed on it and spun the knob. I don't know. The phase could be all messed up. Being able to literally change the phase 1 degree at a time made him worry he would never be able to stop measuring, but he found that with the sub at the front of his room set to 90 degrees and the sub at the back of his room set to 0 degrees, he got a graph where all of his seats were within a couple of dB of each other. It wasn't necessarily the most linear looking graph, but it was the most uniform, and being able to change his sub's front setting from his phone did come in handy, so all worked out well. So.
That is good news. Happy to hear it. And yeah, apparently it was a easy swap out and in. The physical size of the amps works just fine.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's really more about where the holes are for the screws than anything else. I mean, the fact that they thought well enough ahead to make sure that that was the case. Yeah. I mean, I would love to swap out my amps for something I control with my phone. That's for sure.
I hadn't thought about the separate little control panel. I was like, oh yeah, that is the case on the 4000 series. And since he was a PB13 Ultra, that used to have all the controls on the amp itself. But yeah, thankfully he can use the app, and it all still works just swimmingly well.
All right, Michael wanted to share some info. Having recently received his order from Geek Acoustics, there were some significant delays in getting his order shipped due to staffing issues related to COVID. He says that they were very professional and friendly about it. They communicated clearly, and he had every opportunity to cancel his order if he didn't want to wait. But it's just worth being aware that they aren't able to ship as quickly as usual right now. It's all about communication.
It is. Yeah.
It is. People will, especially if they've ordered something that they want, they will wait forever if they know that if you just keep talking to them about what you're doing and why things are slowed down and where it is in the process and everything else. I mean, nothing is more irritating than going to like your Amazon order and seeing that it hasn't shipped yet. I'm like, what the heck? At least if you can see it's in transit, you can like, all right, well, it's doing something. Something's happening. Yeah. So communication is key if you're gonna have shipping issues or whatever. Communication is key.
Certainly understandable, but I do appreciate it's good to know because I mean, obviously we recommend them frequently around here. So it's just good to know that there might be a wait involved. It's for a very legitimate and understandable reason, and they will apparently communicate it to you. Again, I don't doubt that for a second, having dealt with Geek before myself. So, but yeah, good to be aware of.
Yeah, I like the Geek guys.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't, every experience I've had with Geek has been positive. And from a standpoint of a reviewer, because I think the main interaction I had with them was when they reviewed their tri-traps. I mean, not everything I said about those things were positive, and there was no like blowback. Right. And sometimes manufacturers can get real parental about these things. Well, you mean my baby's not perfect? Your baby's not perfect because none of them are, and your baby's ugly. All right, but not in this case. Let's get to some questions here. Don is looking to make upgrades to the 5.1 system in his RV and write an article about it. Yep, that's what he's going to do. Didn't we already deal with this RV guy?
I don't think this is the same RV person, because this is
there's two RV
This is a very different looking setup from the previous RV setup.
It does look different. Yes. There's a lot of wood in here. All right. At the moment, he has a 40-inch LED LCD TV with all Polk monitor series speakers and a Tang band passive subwoofer. Tang. It's a band, like for a band.
No, I think Tang Band is the brand name, as far as I know. I'm not familiar with it, but that is what he wrote. So that is what I wrote.
Okie dokie. Naturally, physical space is at a premium, so that greatly limits his options. Also, rerunning wires is not part of this project, so the subwoofer needs to remain passive. Don has it in mind that he would like the TV's built-in apps to essentially be the only source. There's a 50-foot HDMI cable from 2009 already routed with no intentions of replacing it, but if all it needs to carry is the audio return channel, that should be okay, right?
Yeah,
no. Well, I mean, it depends on. I mean, it's from 2009, right? So it's 11 years old. Yeah. So there's going to be whatever bandwidth limitations it has, and as long as it has audio return channel which it should be fine. But you might be getting nothing but 5.1.
Well, yeah, but it's only a
Dolby.
5.1 system anyway. I mean, it's
Right, but no lossless or anything.
no lossless. No, it's going to be Dolby Digital at best, but that's okay. It's an RV setup. I think he'll survive with. I mean, it's all streaming services anyway. So at best, they're sending Dolby Digital Plus. And important to remember, this isn't the upgraded quality version of Dolby Digital Plus. It is the same quality at a lower bandwidth version of Dolby Digital Plus. So having that come out as regular vanilla 5.1 Dolby Digital via the audio return channel is no problem. And the original audio return channel didn't require Ethernet, which the new enhanced audio return channel does. But the original didn't, so yeah, whatever cable you've got in there, it should be okay. Should be.
Right. So I'm looking at this picture, and I know people who are not on YouTube can't see this picture, but where's the TV? Is there a TV in this picture?
Yeah, straight ahead. The black rectangle straight ahead. That's the TV.
Oh my God. I thought that was a blacked out window.
Nope. That's the TV with a little center channel
speaker
below it.
underneath.
I don't know where the front, left, and right are. He said they're hidden behind speaker grill cloth somewhere, and I'm like, I don't really see where it is, but I'll take your word for it that they're at the front there somewhere. I don't know where they are. I can't see them in the photo. He says they're there. Dude, I don't know, man.
I see the surrounds. So the surrounds are right these little cubes there. So I see those, but what speaker grill cloth is he talking about?
I don't know. Believe me, man. I looked. I don't know, but that's what he said, so I'm leaving it at that. All
right, here we go. So did I read all the question? All right. Which TV? The width of the available space is 37.8 inches. Is there any current 43-inch model that would fit and also be a good choice? Now, just so people understand, the cabinet he has it set on has a wall to the right side of it, and to the left is the walkway.
That's right.
To the hallway for this place. So if you overshoot at all, your TV's edges are going to be in the walkway, which means invariably somebody's going to bump into it and spin that TV and possibly knock it off of this thing. So I think it's very important that it stays within the width limitations that he has set.
Now,
what you got, Rob?
I am going to suggest Samsung's QLED, the current model Q60T, which I'm showing an image of it on YouTube. If you want bezels as thin as bezels get, this is it. You can't really get any thinner than that without them completely disappearing. Now, the thing is, it is a 43-inch size. He's currently got a 40, but with some bezel. So it's going up in screen size, downing the bezel. It is 37.9 inches wide. He said he has 37.8 inches. It's going to be sticking a teeny tiny little bit out in that walkway, I guess. But I mean, that's so darn close. And the thing, I mean, it's a really good television, all things considered, for this size class. You're getting the full HDR support, and it is a QLED with the full wide colors. So that's the one I'll recommend to you, the Q60T from Samsung. I hope being 0.1 of an inch doesn't make it a deal breaker. Too large.
So he's got a passive subwoofer somewhere in here,
yeah,
right?
somewhere. I'm not sure where. Again, it's hidden within a cabinet somewhere.
I don't like not knowing where the speakers are. He asked which AV receiver. He has enough cabinet space for a full-size receiver, but he would also need a separate amplifier for his passive sub. He would greatly prefer if powering the receiver on and off all happened automatically along with controlling his TV. So seamless HDMI CEC is what he's hoping for. What do we suggest, and which amplifier for his passive sub as well? Boy, I'll tell you right now, I would rather use Harmony than try to rely on the HDMI CEC to make things work.
Although if his TV is his only source, it should be okay.
It should work.
It should be okay.
We know.
Yeah.
We always say this. It should work. And then it doesn't work, and people are like, why didn't it work? HDMI CEC sucks. That's why.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no getting around it.
But it should be.
I would spend the extra money. I like, you know what I like for this? I like a slimline.
Of course, a Marantz slimline. Yeah, and I don't think he's upgrading beyond 5 channels, so I think the NR1510, which is the 5.1 model, it doesn't decode Atmos, but you're also not going to be sending Atmos from the audio return channel, so I think the NR1510 is a great choice. Yeah.
I like saving space, even if he has the same the space, I would go ahead and
With
space.
Marantz's, you do want to make sure, as far as CEC goes, they separate every part of CEC in the Marantz menu. So it's actually in the video section, because that's where the HDMI settings are. And in there, you can set the HDMI control, the HDMI power, and the HDMI audio return channel also. You'd want to turn all three of those things on in your case to have this work as seamlessly as you can. As far as a amplifier for your passive subwoofer, definitely Dayton's APA 150 is where I would point you. It's a nice compact sort of rectangle shape, and you do have the option to bridge it, which is what you would do. That gives you the full 150 watts when you bridge it like that, and it has a low pass filter, which is a great thing when connecting to a passive subwoofer driver, because that allows you to filter off the high frequencies and not have to worry about that at all. So Dayton's APA 150 is a great choice for that. But yeah, getting into the next part, all of that might potentially be moot, but we'll see. Next question.
All right. What would we suggest as a speaker upgrade? One big challenge is the available space for the center speaker. There are cabinets above and below the TV, so there's really only about 4 inches of height for the center speaker, and the other 4 speakers are behind speaker cloth covers within hidden cabinet spaces, so they need to be around 10 inches tall by 6.5 inches square or so. What can we suggest? So I'm looking at the speakers he currently has in here, and they're small, very small, cubish things. At least I think that's what those things are. I like the NHTs, the Super Zeros. I like that for this. I think those
even that though is the center is more than 4 inches tall.
Is it though?
Yeah, because the driver in that thing I think is 4 inches. Pretty darn sure that it's not like a 3-inch driver. I mean, I agree with you as far as being compact and good sound quality, but yeah, as far as the center goes, I don't think it's going to be small enough for this. I'll go on to the point I was considering, which is I'm thinking soundbar. Because then you can have wireless surrounds and a wireless sub that comes with it. And again, we have to consider the width here. The width actually ends up being a big consideration. But I was thinking maybe you go Sonos, a Sonos Beam, because their new ARC is too wide, and actually even the old Playbar is too wide for the space he has. But a Sonos Beam, which is a 3-channel soundbar up front that is less than 3 inches tall. So that would certainly fit physically, and then you combine it with some little Sonos One wireless surrounds and the wireless Sonos sub, which gets you away from the whole passive sub and worrying about wires situation. So, I mean, that would just be an ARC cable going from the TV straight down to the little Sonos Beam in front of it, and then everything else is connected wirelessly. I think that's worth considering. What'd you find on the NHTs?
Yeah, they're 5.5.
Yeah.
So, but I'm looking at this TV that he's got right here, and there is space between the top of the TV and the bottom of the cabinet. So I'm wondering how much up he can cheat that and still work this in here, because the rest of them would work quite well.
Oh yeah, Super Zeros would be a really nice choice. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Because they will definitely fit in the other spaces. The other 4 speakers are behind.
Right.
He says the other 4 speakers are behind, but what are those little cube things? Those are not speakers?
I'm not totally sure about it. Like I say, I couldn't see where all the speakers are in here, but no, that's a good solution. The other one I would suggest to you is Kef. And again, I'm going speaker bar here because they have Kef's HTF 7003, which is only 3.1 inches high and only 30.9 inches wide. So physically it'll fit. Now that's all 3 of your front channels, but in one bar that would sit below your television. So I'm not sure about running, because this actually takes speaker wire. This isn't a sound bar. So I'm not sure about getting speaker wire all 3 channels under your TV, but doing that along with their E301 surround speakers, which are nice compact that you could place. So to me, those are very nice speakers that would physically fit, and then you'd still be using your passive sub.
So the Prime satellite speakers are 4.9 inches wide. If you laid one of those down up front, you could use that for a center channel. If
Possibly.
5.5 is too big, can you get to 4.9? That would be another good solution because they're 8.75 by 4.9 by 6. They're
Okay.
6 deep.
Yeah.
So that it fits it clicks all the other boxes.
Right.
It's just that one dimension.
The one dimension,
so
yeah.
those are the ones I suggest.
All right.
Whatever. All right. Michael lost the Audyssey microphone that came with his Denon X3500H, but he has the mic that came with his X1200W. Its model number is ACM1HB. Would be okay to use that mic with his 3500H. Searching online, people are saying they are interchangeable. The only replacement Audyssey mic you can find for purchase is that same model number. I am imagining it probably is the same, but a quick call to Denon or Audyssey
It'd be
or
Denon
whomever.
now. Yeah.
Sure. But does Denon own Audyssey these days? I mean, have they bought it, or what is Audyssey doing?
I'm not sure on the whole thing. As the last I read about it is Denon did buy out like the perpetual licensing rights to using Audyssey and AV receivers, so it's like theirs now. That part of it. Audyssey, the company, I think is still a separate entity, but as far as I know, they're only focusing on like car audio stuff now. So
car audio.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. So I'm not 100% sure on the ownership over there, but anyway. But yeah, it should be fine. Like the Audyssey has not changed their microphone for any of their models. Denon and Marantz have not changed that microphone model for any of their receiver models in years now. So it should be fine. Yeah, a quick call to Denon just to double check, but as far as I'm aware, it should be absolutely fine.
All right, Matt went with Rob's suggestion, and he got a 75-inch Sony X900F TV. He's blown away by the size increase from 55 inches. That's not just because it's Sony, as well as the picture quality. Now, that might be because it's Sony. The only downside is that regular TV shows via his dish hopper look even worse compared to 4K HDR content with the size increase, but that's not the TV's fault. His one problem is with the audio return channel. He's using a Marantz SR6012 receiver, and much of the time when he goes to use the Sony's built-in apps, he gets no signal at all. It seems as though if he turns on HDMI control in the Marantz and lets the Sony power everything on and off again via HDMI CEC, that seems to get audio return channel working. But as soon as he switches inputs on the Sony and then goes back to the built-in apps, the ARC isn't working anymore. He has seen other people complain online about ARC issues. See previous answer to previous question and why I think Harmony remotes are the way to go.
Except he won't be changing inputs, so the previous question should be okay.
Should be. Should
Fingers
being
crossed.
the optimal word there. Is this something that can be easily fixed? HDMI and easily fixed. So funny. Should he just buy a streaming stick, plug that into his receiver, and call it a day? Well, we just said something about. This reminds me of a story I want to tell after this question is answered. But yeah, this just reminds me of the thing Rob just said, which is Marantz takes. And in CEC breaks everything down individually, so there's probably multiple settings you have to check in that Marantz, and that might be part of the problem.
Now, almost completely the reverse of what I said to Don, where I was telling him to turn every individual part of HDMI CEC on for his particular setup. This is one where I would suggest to you that the only thing you have on is the audio return channel, that you turn the HDMI control and the HDMI power off in your Marantz SR6012 for Matt's setup. Now, that would necessitate that anytime you want to use your Sony television's built-in apps, you have to manually press the TV audio button on your Marantz's remote, just like you would for any other input, right? Whenever you're switching inputs on the Marantz, you would press a button on the remote. In this case, you would press the TV audio button to activate the audio return channel manually. Because what it sounds like he's having trouble with is the automatic side of it. And yeah, it is problematic getting it to automatically detect and switch, which is what people wanted to do, but it causes these problems. If you do it manually, it's pretty darn reliable. So he must already have Bravia Sync turned on in his Sony TV if it's ever working, because that's a necessity. Right. But in the Marantz, I would suggest going the manual route. So all of the HDMI control stuff, turn it off, except for the audio return channel. It's the only one you would have on, and then manually press TV audio just like you would any other input. It should work. It works okay on mine. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the first Airbnb we stayed at, they had it was like a kind of more modern setup, and it was just a rental house. I mean, the people own it, and all they do is Airbnb it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice, but it was clearly set up with looks in mind and not so much with functionality. The couches weren't very comfortable, but they looked nice.
Mm-hmm.
The TV was way too high on the wall, but it looked nice. There's other issues, but after about 3 days of being there, my wife looked at me and says, "What the heck's wrong with the TV?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Everything looks fake. All the sets look like sets." I'm like, I know it's probably 120 hertz panel, and they probably have all the smoothing and
Of course they do.
all stuff turned on. It's the color's off. I could have told you that just when we walked in. I looked at it and went, "Oh, that's not right." I could have but you don't like it when I start messing with other people's TVs, so I left it. She got so mad at that TV. I was like so proud,
Mm-hmm.
And then the second place we went to, it was this itty bitty TV, and it was stuck inside of literally like a armoire or something like that. You'd open up these little doors in this TV, and it had no speakers or anything with it. It was a TCL. It was nice.
Mm-hmm.
The colors were terrible, and it was inside. It was just very tinny, and everything was very reflective inside this armoire that it was in, and it was very far away. And at one point, she looked at me and she goes, "I can't wait till we get home to the home theater." I'm like, one good thing came out of COVID, I guess. This is it. This is the thing.
That's when you wish you were recording so you could play it back in perpetuity.
Oh my God, I was so happy when she was like, "Why does everything look stupid?" TV. I'm like, I said I can do a whole podcast episode on this. We could talk about 4K and smoothing and
and filmmaker mode now.
Yeah. Oh, right. And then I said it's basically it's the soap opera effect.
That's right.
And so I just explained it to her, and she's like, "Okay." I said, "Well, I can fix it." She goes, "No, don't worry about it." Damn it. All right, Brian. Brian says he enjoyed our appearances on the Brightside Home Theater podcast. During Rob's appearance, he talked about professional display calibration and mentioned Lion AV is a good resource. So Brian reached out to them, had a great conversation with one of their affiliated calibrators who performs calibrations in Brian's home state of Indiana. But it turns out this calibrator covers the entire Midwest, and what he basically does is tour around the territory that he covers, sort of like a traveling band. So he won't be back in Indiana until September or so. Is it normal to have to wait for a calibrator in your area? Is this approach of touring around a territory typical, or is it possible to schedule a professional calibration in a more timely fashion? Well, it depends on where you live.
Yeah.
If you live in the big city, there's absolutely no reason that you have to wait longer than a couple of days.
If you live in, say, California, you're going to find lots of professional calibrators available. Yeah.
Right. But yes, this is not only typical. The two guys that were the main trainers for the THX video calibration class I took, that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
They just traveled around different areas, and then they would schedule as they go and go into people's houses. It was pretty typical, especially in more rural areas where they're not going to have a professional calibrator nearby. They need somebody, that's how they make their money. They go around and calibrate stuff.
Yeah, it's not unusual, certainly, to find that as the way. Now, I mean, Lion AV, of course, is just one group of calibrators. So if you were to go directly and contact the Imaging Science Foundation, there might be another certified calibrator in your area. The reason I mentioned Lion AV specifically is because they are a group who will vouch for the calibrators that they recommend, because described on the Brightside Home Theater podcast, not just guys who are just going to come in, tell you to get out of the room, do what they do, and get out as quickly as possible. They're actually going to take the time to talk to you and give you a bit of an education along the way as well. So yeah, it can be worth it. If you're willing to do the wait, then you're going to get a good calibrator that way. And yes, we are having bandwidth issues, which is why Tom is making those expressions. I don't know if you can hear anything I'm saying, but yeah, this is not unusual.
Yeah, none of that came through.
The signal was going well for quite a while, and now it's red and zero.
I'm just assuming you're done talking.
I am.
Jay, the Digital Bits posted an article on Kaleidescape about Kaleidescape, pointing out how their library of 4K HDR titles is actually larger than the available catalog of physical Ultra HD Blu-rays, and how they create their own downloadable versions from the mezzanine files. Mezzanine? Is that how you say that?
Yeah, that's what they call them, the mezzanine
that
file.
they get directly from the studios, which often means slightly less compression and larger file sizes than the disc versions. With disc sales declining, do we agree with the author that this might end up being the replacement for collectors who want the highest quality and a system that doesn't rely on streaming? Do you actually download the Kaleidescape stuff? It's on a box in your house, and you own that box, and they can't delete stuff off of it? Is that how that works?
Well, so it is download. There is no way to stream the movies that you purchase on Kaleidescape. You do have to download them if you're using their current Strato players. That has a hard drive built into it. They also have, of course, a server that you can use to expand the amount of storage that you have available. But yeah, it is all download based. But they don't say it explicitly on their website, but I'm pretty sure that those devices are phoning home and using some kind of DRM authentication, mainly because they have a marine version, because of course they cater to people who have private yachts and stuff like that and want to have systems installed in those where they won't necessarily have internet connections, of course. And what they do there is they have a system where you must contact your rep, your dealer, for your marine version of the system. They download it onto an encrypted hard drive and deliver it to you. That's how it's handled for a system that can't connect to the internet. So that to me says, I think they must be doing some authentication. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to have that system for the marine system. You could just download it yourself and take it with you. And that is not how it works. So, yeah, I mean, Kaleidescape back in, 2015 or 2016 went bankrupt and then kind of got resurrected, changed how they handle their studio relationships and that a little bit when they did that. Before when they started, you were putting in your own discs and it was ripping it to a hard drive. And that was, why they were charging, over $10,000 for their stuff at the time, because they basically wanted their customer base to be so small that they wouldn't get sued out of existence, but they kind of did anyway. So when Blu-ray came along, they had their system where you could actually copy it onto the hard drive, but to play it back, you had to have the physical disc in a disc player of some sort. So they had like one of those giant jukebox disc players, you could store like 500 discs, and that's how they handle Blu-rays. Now with 4K, you can play back a 4K disc on a player, but there's no ripping it to the hard drive whatsoever. If you want it on a hard drive, you download it from their store. So, I mean, they still don't have Lionsgate at all, so there's no John Wick, there's no Hunger Games on there. You can't get those movies, but they got Paramount. That was the other studio they didn't used to have, but they have them now. So it's really only Lionsgate that they don't have anymore. The quality of the files I have no issue with. Very often it actually is even higher quality than the Ultra HD Blu-ray. But the issue to me is, you purchase these movies directly from their store now. They have a disc-to-digital program, although it isn't every single movie. But most movies, they have a disc-to-digital program. So if you already built a physical disc collection, you can convert most of that for a fee, but a reduced fee, into all Kaleidescape. But if they go under again, or they lose the rights to certain movies in their store, it certainly seems like there is a DRM scheme going on where it has to authenticate. So it's still the instance where, in the future, you might lose access to movies that you bought, which discs you never, ever will. And then, of course, there's comparing it to something like just, Apple movies, where that is streaming, and of course they can remove a movie from their library at any given time, and you don't have a downloaded version of it. So Kaleidescape's a little bit superior in that sense, but I don't think it's still not as secure as having a disc.
Yeah, and I guess in the end, that's where I am going to always fall on the side of, I don't want to have to rely on the goodwill of a company and their ability to stay afloat in order for me to have access to the things I've bought. I don't know how else to say that other than, if you're going to spend the kind of money that you're going to spend on Kaleidescape, I would love there to be some reassurances. Now, people who are putting these things on their yachts, you know,
Well, I mean, that makes you're not going to use an Apple TV on your yacht. You don't have an internet connection when you're out there.
But if their digital library goes away, I don't know that. I mean, they'd be irritated, but I don't know that they'd be, you know, like, oh my God, I wasted all this money. It would crush me to have wasted any money whatsoever, much less a lot, which you would have to do for Kaleidescape.
Yeah, it's a very niche crowd that Kaleidescape appeals to because, you know, on the lower end side, you've got, hey, I'm just going to buy everything on Apple movies because their selection is bigger than Kaleidescape's. Their quality now is not bad. It's not as good as Kaleidescape. I'm not claiming that, but it's by no means bad anymore. And their selection of 4K with HDR and Atmos is actually even larger than Kaleidescape's. You know, so that's on the one side, but of course you are streaming it. And then on the other side, you've got, you know, continuing to buy physical discs. But yeah, that is starting to die out in a pretty heavy way now. Nobody's made a new Ultra HD Blu-ray player model in a couple of years at this point. So yeah, this is the high-end one. They've got the extra things like metadata, where if you have a system with 4-way motorized masking, they've actually got the metadata for the exact aspect ratio of that movie that can tie into that system and move the masking for you to exactly the perfect shape, which is something you can kind of do with like a Kodi plugin, you know, if you want to rip your own movies and do it that way. But, you know, it's all pre-programmed for you. So yeah, it's a pretty niche crowd, and I think they're kind of squeezed on either end. And it only appeals to a pretty small crowd. I don't know if they can get to the point where, yeah, you can just download the movie and own it forever and get down to a price point that would appeal to like me specifically. Yeah, it's tough. It's a challenge.
It is, and you know that it's very hard for me to justify the kind of money. And Apple, at the very least, doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
It's going to take
It doesn't mean
lot.
that they couldn't. Well, you would think, but it doesn't, you know, I've seen bigger, maybe not bigger, but I've seen big companies go from top of the world to bankrupt in a matter of months.
And of course, their movie stores,
with some bad actors.
Their movie store is just one very small part of their business. So that could be something they shut down or sell off completely independent of the rest of
That's
the
why
company.
I don't buy anything from Google, the Google store. I mean, Google kills products like it's some sort of competition. It is really the Hunger Games over there in their app store. It's just, you know, not apps, but the apps, the things that they develop. You never know what's going to get killed. I don't know how the employees feel about that, but I know that would find that extremely stressful.
How's that Stadia library going for going for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That lasted, what, like 5.5 seconds?
Apparently it's still going. But like Samsung shut down their Gear VR. You know, they had Gear VR for a while over at Samsung. They shut it down, and all the games you bought, they don't work anymore. They're just gone.
Right. All right, Joe. Joe has a Denon X4300H, which has 9 amplifiers built in. He is currently running a 7.1 configuration and now considering expanding to Atmos. Or just connecting his surround back speakers and going 5.1.4, or should he replace his 4300H with 11-channel receiver model instead? I would go for 5.1.4 to see if you loved it. And if you loved it and really missed your surround back speakers, then I would upgrade your receiver.
Except
if you go ahead.
You don't have to upgrade your receiver. You could just add a 2-channel amplifier, because the 4300H... Yeah, the 4300H, while it has 9 amplifiers built in, it does have the ability to process 11 speakers. It has 11 speaker pre-outs, so you can just add an inexpensive 2-channel amplifier and expand back up to 11 speakers if you wanted to. So I don't think Joe was aware of that, so that's definitely a good thing to be aware. You don't have to buy a whole new receiver. Yeah, but I would... I mean, I will always say to go for 4 overhead speakers if you're going to do it, and you have a receiver that can do so, because otherwise you don't get front-to-back panning. You only get side-to-side. So to get the full experience, I want 4 overheads.
I mean, 5.1.4, and if you're like, oh my God, surround back speakers, where are you? I miss you. I love you so much. Well, then you buy an amp and a couple more speakers. Ken would like to add a center speaker to his setup. He's using Paradigm on-wall speakers that are now a discontinued model, the Studio Series Esprit V4 in a cherry finish. I don't think the cherry finish.
It's Esprit.
I don't know, whatever. The cherry finish doesn't have much to it. He would like the center to also be on an on-wall model. If it could have a matching cherry finish, that would be ideal, but a black finish is also fine. In Paradigm's current lineup, their on-wall options are the custom-made Decor series or the Millennia series that have been around for a while. The Millennia series actually uses nearly identical drivers to the Studio Esprit speakers, albeit smaller diameters, and he would be able to get a Millennia 20 center at a good price. The only hang-up is that the stated frequency response is plus or minus 2 dB from 110 to 20 kilohertz, and the Paradigm's stated DIN low end extension is 77 hertz. Whatever.
Which is basically the minus 10 decibel point.
Yeah,
they still put that in there. Paradigm does.
DIN is so it's just that terrible. The only one who reports it is them, and it's terrible.
Pretty much.
Ken is used to setting his crossover to 80 hertz, but if the specs are correct, he might have to use a higher crossover for the Millennia 20 center, right? Will he be missing much by not having center play all the way down to 80? Is this the center speaker to get, or would we recommend something else more highly? I am okay with this. First of all, that DIN doesn't really tell you anything. The plus or minus 2 dB from 110 to 20 is way more informative. But that being said, I don't really think that your center channel needs to be dipping all the way down to 80 hertz to begin with. There's not a ton of content in my mind that's that low coming from your center channel. And even if there is, it's also coming from your left and right channels. So, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Paradigm speakers sound more similar than dissimilar as you go around their line. So just buying another Paradigm speaker is an easy fix for your problem. But many of the speaker brands that we recommend includes SVS, RBH, Aperion, Ascend. That's the other A one. All those, the CAF, maybe not CAF as much, but all those are very linear speakers, and they would play nice. So if you see something in those lines and you're like, that looks better, that's the kind of one I want right there, and you said that you were going to do that, I would be okay with it. But it's very easy if you could get the Millennia 20 center at a good price, I would probably just do that.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not talking about, if this was like, it rolls off at 200 hertz, I might squinch my face at that. But plus minus 2 dB, not even 3 dB, 2 dB. So you're probably going to end up with a 100, maybe a 110 hertz crossover. That's not so high that it's anything I'm concerned about. I would even say particularly in the center, because like Tom said, the bass sounds are more in the front left and right channels than they are in the center. So I don't see any problem with that. It has almost an identical tweeter to what you're using now. So and Paradigm is very neutral across the board. So the odds of it having any sort of timbre mismatch are very, very low. And then, in all those other speaker brands that we talked about, I guess RBH has the Ultra 1 series, but it's chunkier and more expensive, so there's not a huge reason to do that. Ascend has their HTM 200 SE or their Sierra Luna, but I'm not sure that the ribbon tweeter is what you really want to put in here. And then the HTM 200 SE is a boxier design. It's only 6 inches front to back, but it's boxier. So I think the Millennia 20 is a very, very good choice, and I don't have any issue with it potentially being crossed over 20 hertz higher. Right.
I'm with you. Luke is a fan of both 3D and front wide speakers. Get out. Sorry.
This is the place to come. This might be the only place to come to talk about such things.
All those people had to move to Canada. Sorry. That's why Rob's up there. He's originally from Florida.
If that were true, it would be escaping the heat. I would have done that.
Yeah, I wish I could escape the heat. So Luke is a fan of both 3D and front wide speakers, but he feels that both technologies are underappreciated. No, I don't think that's the case. I think you overappreciate them, but that's, tomato, whatever. He gets the impression that we consider 3D to be a dying format. Oh, it's not just us. It's pretty much the entire world. Let's go on. Rather than a developing one. But he has watched several movies at home in both their 4K HDR version on his Vizio P series and his 3D on his Epson 2040 projector. He uses Alita Battle Angel as a prime example where the 3D version was more enjoyable and immersive and also a more effective film, as the 3D truly enhanced the storytelling. More movies are still released in 3D in theaters, as long as there's still theaters. So let's cross our fingers on that one. And with bright 4K resolution displays at home, the technology exists to make the 3D experience better than ever. So Luke wants to know why we think or don't think 3D could or should have a resurgence in the home market. People don't like it. That's the beginning of a discussion and the end of the discussion. People don't like it. They don't like wearing the glasses. Many people get motion sickness. A lot of people find it distracting. It is so often the case that it is not well implemented to the point of distraction. I'll point you towards the first Avengers movie as being a perfect example of, oh my God, look, they remember that it was 3D. Woo, things are flying. Okay, now we're back to 2D again.
Although
all right, whatever.
the last ones, Infinity War and Endgame, were some of the best 3D conversion. So
it's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I'll never see them that way. You know, there's what you're saying is not incorrect. It could be and should be, one could argue, a format that would be the most preferable. It's the most lifelike. You know, one of the reasons why models and actors and actresses, I guess they're all actors, I shouldn't say actresses, are so thin and are always, when you see them in real life, you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
eat a sandwich. I mean, they look skeletal, right? I saw Daryl Hannah one time in a Verizon store when I was when I lived in LA, and I thought she might just pass out. She might die right now. I mean, that's how thin she was. But one of the reasons they are is because of 2D.
Yeah.
You know, seeing something in 2D, you get no sense of, what their actual dimensions are. So, they say the camera adds 10 pounds. What that really is the fact that you can't really tell how people actually look in real life. Yeah. So they have to be extra thin in order to look just normally thin, kind of healthy to you. So I absolutely agree that 3D could be, and maybe arguably should be, the best way to enjoy the content that we all love so much. But the implementation and the execution of how you have to experience 3D is such, and has always been such, that people don't like it. And I'm with them. So you, sir, need to start looking towards VR. And any sort of VR experience, there is where your 3D will once again reign supreme. When we start transitioning from, sitting down in front of a screen with other people, which, I mean, we're not doing that anymore anyways, unless they're your personal family, to sitting down virtually with people in a virtual environment with VR, in a VR experience, I think then 3D will once again be the currency of the land.
Now, I mean, the reason that I'm a 3D fan, I remain a fan, one of the last ones, but the reason I'm willing to say, yeah, it's absolutely dying, if not outright dead in the home market, is there are no current 3D televisions, flat panels, none being made. Yes, it still exists in projectors, but that's the only way to get it at home anymore. And the number of 3D discs that are available is dwindling. I mean, in North America, there's almost none. You have to import them from the UK most of the time to get the 3D version now, because they're still releasing them in Europe for some reason, but very few in North America. So, I mean, there's no question that as a format at home, it's just largely dead already. I agree with you that with when OLEDs came out, 4K OLEDs, there was the 6 series was the last series that had passive 3D, and you had the brightness of OLED and the 4K resolution, so skipping every other line per eye was no problem. You still got 1080p per eye with the passive version, which is the best version we ever had of 3D. And then, but it didn't have the dynamic tone mapping, and it didn't have the maximum brightness that we got the very next year in the 7 series OLEDs, but then the 7 series OLEDs all dropped 3D, and I absolutely lamented that, because I was like, we finally got the perfect display technology for the best looking 3D ever, and that's the year they dropped 3D. And I was like, oh, it was so close. So I completely am with you. I lament it, but yeah, it's not coming back. And companies are so darn stupid that they completely shot themselves in the foot with all the incompatible 3D glasses. If they had gotten together and had one standard, it might have had a better chance, but they'll do it again because they remain that stupid. Look at all the Hollywood studios we've all got our own individual streaming services now, and none of them are compatible with each other. That's what they do. They do it again. So I have no faith.
No, I mean, there's format wars are just what happens. And the format might be a cable, the format might be a streaming service. I mean, I look at some of these streaming services. I would love to watch Picard. I am not signing up for
CBS All Access.
I'm just not. I'm not doing it. I don't care about anything else that's on there. And I haven't heard that, Picard is like the best thing. That's everybody's like, yeah, it starts off really strong and then kind of gets weird at the end. I'm like, okay, well, great. Still not getting it. Well, I'll go on and read the next question in a second here, but there's just, we all have the things that we really love that we don't understand why other people don't love it as much as we love it.
Sure.
And that's just the way people are. There's things, I mean, I love horror movies. I absolutely I'll sit down and watch a bad horror movie any day before I'll watch a good, murder mystery. I just love horror movies. I don't understand why other people don't like them, but they don't.
I'm inferring this a bit, but I think Luke is perhaps of the mind that, we're a group of people who are very passionate about home theater, and I think he's thinking, hey, if we advocate for it and get more people on board, that'll increase demand, perhaps to the point that it could,
You're overestimating our reach.
Well,
sure.
There's that, but it's like I've been around long enough talking, home theater forums before I got into podcasting, and like back when it was HD DVD versus Blu-ray, and it's like there were legitimately good arguments for HD DVD on a technical side, why it had advantages.
Yes.
But I was like, from as soon as all the studios were on Blu-ray and only a handful were on HD DVD, on the forums, I was telling everybody, I'm like, it's over, go get Blu-ray. And at that point, I had accumulated a couple hundred HD DVDs. It's not like I was against the format. And there were a couple of guys there who were like, no, you got to keep, like if we increase the number of HD, I'm like, no, it's over. You got to be realistic. And I'm sorry, 3D at home it's over.
Yeah. So Luke has been using front wide speakers for a few years now, and what he appreciates is how they expand the width of the front soundstage. He appreciates this for both movies and music. He's heard Rob say that he's a fan of front wides, he's also heard him say that he thinks what they are so subtle, as though that is undesirable. I think you're reading too much into it, but go on.
Yeah, I think that's a misinterpretation of what I'm saying.
And he hasn't heard Tom advocate for front wides at all. Is not entirely true, but probably accurate based on the number of times you listen to the podcast. Luke's opinion is that ideally front wide should be the first additional pair of speakers added beyond 5.1, but he also strongly feels that if someone finds their surround backs or Atmos speakers to be virtually useless, then those speaker positions aren't working as intended in that person's system. But even with that said, he thinks front wides make a bigger, more worthwhile difference than surround backs or Atmos speakers. So what are our thoughts on all of that? So just so we're all on the same page here, I don't care about front wides. I mean, I don't hate or not hate them. I just don't care about them. I am indifferent to them. And not because I think positive or negative about them. I think realistic about them. All right. First of all, most people don't need their soundstage expanded. What front wides really do is what you're supposed to do is put them right where the first reflection point would be on your wall, and then that speaker then controls that first reflection point, gives you, that wider soundstage. It controls that. Okay, that's what it's kind of supposed to do. Now, do people set them up correctly? I don't know. Do people need a larger front soundstage? Mostly no. Will people put more speakers in their system? No. We have a hard enough time getting people to go past the TV and a sound bar, much less getting to 5.1 and then two front wides and then surround backs and then 4 overhead Atmos speakers up to 6 Atmos speakers. And it's it's a realistic look at this thing. Front wides, we tried them. They tried to sell them to us, and some people tried them and advocated for them, and most people, like me, literally do not have the space for them.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
There is no front wide space. It would be within inches of my front speakers. So do I really need another speaker right there? I mean, I can't imagine how much difference it could possibly make. Now, it might be, big, but my soundstage goes from outside my room on my right to outside my room on the left. Like I can hear sounds going through the room the entire way across my front soundstage when I do 2-channel listening tests. Does it need to be bigger than that? I really don't feel like it does.
Yeah, it's the logistics of front wides are a challenge. Yeah, and I think.
Yeah, while you may have a very positive experience with them, and that's great. and that's why they're there. That's why we still have them around for people who want to use them. For most people, they are both impractical and unnecessary.
Yeah.
Rob.
I mainly think the logistics, because I mean, a lot of people have an entrance right where the front wide speaker would go, or an opening, L-shaped room. So there's that aspect of it. I mean, even when there were more models that had the option of using front wides, it was higher priced models. It never made its way down to the entry level or even the mid level receivers at any point. So you had to already be going for a higher priced receiver for it to even be an option. People do tend to want to have content that is specifically made to use the speakers that they have. There were a grand total of 3 titles that ever came out that specifically had soundtracks to make use of front wide speakers. So there was a lot going on there. Now, again, I'm like the advocate for it. He's writing to this podcast because we're one of the few that ever even talks about front wides as if they exist whatsoever, and I'm a fan of them. I opted to get rid of surround backs to have front wides instead in my own system. That's how much I like them. So yeah, you're talking to the right person when it comes to front wides, but I don't want to make people feel as though if you don't have them, it's the end of the world, because it isn't. It just flat out isn't the end of the world if you don't have them. I think they make a nice enhancement, enough that I chose them over surround backs. So yeah, I'm absolutely an advocate for them as well. But yeah, I think you have to just be realistic about the logistics of it in people's systems.
Yeah. If we were tasked with convincing someone to use front wides, what would be our arguments for them? Do you really want to spend some more money? Have you already bought everything else and you're just like, I just want to do something different in here? Then that's pretty much how I would convince. I don't have a convincing reason why front wides are needed. I can't think of a reason why you would need front wides. I can think of a reason why you might want them.
Okay.
But mostly it's just like, I want to expand my front soundstage a little bit. I've got this really wide room, and I've got room treatments everywhere, and I would, I have the space over here. Would adding more speakers expand my soundstage? Well, it might a little bit, I suppose. But yeah, you would have to you would have to convince me you wanted them, and I'd be like, okay, I give you permission.
I mean, to me, the argument for front wides is exactly the arguments that Audyssey DSX and DTS Neo X made when it came out, which is that we do flat out hear better in front of us than behind us, above us. So it makes more sense. We are better at picking out things directionally and just generally better hearing in front of us. So their whole concept was, hey, put more speakers in front of you than behind you or above you. That's where the idea first came from. And yes, when something is panning around the room, it fills in that gap in between, especially if you have a 5.1 system where the surround speaker is not at 90 degrees, but instead at 110 degrees, so some distance behind you. It fills in that gap that is there between the front left speaker and the surround left speaker, say. When that pan happens, it fills. That's why I like them. I love them for that. When I get that circling pan, it completely fills that in. It's seamless. It really is seamless. So yeah, that's the argument there, that we hear better in front of us than we do behind us.
So what is the barrier that is preventing AV manufacturers from allowing users to select front wides instead of surround backs or a pair of height speakers in a 7.1 receiver model? We can typically already reassign those speaker outputs to the B backs, heights, or zone 2. So why not have the option to make them front wides as well? And why on earth did Denon and Marantz Onkyo remove front wides from the vast majority of their models when they used to have them in years past? No one. Market research would probably be the answer to that.
It really was.
They probably asked all their customers, what speakers do you use? And when they asked them, do you use front wides? They said, what? And that was the end of that. They're like, why would we put any more of our dollars into making this a thing when no one's using it?
Yeah, I mean,
so why do you see it in the higher level receivers? Because in the higher level receivers, you've got those more niche people who are willing to buy the more expensive processors and receivers, and they're more likely to have a desire to have that front wide experience.
Well, heck, when the X8500H got introduced, it was the return of front wides. There was 1, if not 2 years where there were no models with front wides whatsoever. And when that flagship came back, it was the return of front wides. And I got all excited about it and made a Facebook post about it. So yes, I am once again still the fan of front wides. But yeah, on receivers, they have that little thing where it says, can we collect information about how you use your receiver? And so I usually say no to that. But all the people who said yes, I don't think any of them were using front wides. So the information that those receiver manufacturers got back from that kind of data collection was that nobody's using those positions, and I believe that to be the case. The option of you got a 7-channel receiver, those 2 binding posts are typically assignable as backs or heights or zone 2. Why front wides couldn't be an option? I really don't know. I don't have a good answer to that. It should be possible. It's just a matter of they kind of dropped Audyssey DSX altogether, which was one of the ways you could matrix front wides. It's pretty much only the DTS up mixers that have it now. Now, if you already have a DTS Neural X up mixer, which you would on a 7-channel receiver these days, why it wouldn't be able to use front wides as the assignment instead of surround backs? There's no real technical reason why that couldn't be the case, but it's just not something they do.
I mean, I think the reason is because there will be instances when your receiver will be, switched into a automatic surround sound setting like Atmos, where those speakers would then be excluded. They are not used at all.
That's true.
So in order for them to make these speakers assignable, they don't want to have to field calls that say, I have these front wides and I set them up and they never play anything.
Well, because it would really only be DTS Neural X. That'd be the only one. If you're using Dolby Surround up mixer, they'll never make a peep. So
yeah. And I think that without the surround up mixers and the other options, they either have to find a way of doing it themselves, which is going to cost money, or they just don't enable it because it's not worth it to them. I mean, why would you? So on to some different topics. Apparently he hasn't asked enough questions, so here we go. Why do we consider it to be desirable to elevate surround speakers 1 to 2 feet? He's under the assumption that Dolby changed their guidelines and now says to have them at ear level because having them elevated made them sound more diffuse. And now with Atmos, diffuse surrounds are no longer desirable. Is you wrong about that? Yeah, diffusion doesn't have anything to do with it. Elevating the speaker doesn't really make it sound more diffuse. It puts you off axis a little bit. But the way that they have these the diagrams is they have all the speakers now at ear level. And if you read all their stuff, they're like, oh yeah, we've always had them at ear level. No, you haven't. Shut up. But they are also not more than one person in the room, so we say elevate it because we want everybody to have a direct line of sight from their ear to each speaker. And that way you're not getting the sound that's being absorbed essentially by the people sitting next to you. So that's why we say elevate it. I think that if you sat down with a Dolby or DTS person and said, should I put it right at my shoulder or should I elevate it so that everybody at the couch has a line of sight, they would say the latter.
And we're only saying 1 to 2 feet. We're not saying put it 5 feet above your head where, if it was
what we used to say.
5 feet and not angled downward whatsoever, you could end up with it being diffuse because it's none of it is coming directly at you. It's all reflecting around your room at that point. But we're no, 1 or 2 feet simply because that allows a clear line of sight to each listener. If there's literally only one listener, I don't have a problem having it at ear level because there's nothing going to be obstructing between the speaker and you unless you have a high back chair. Then you'd want to elevate it enough to get over the back of your chair. So that's all it is.
So he ran Audyssey Multi-Q XT32 on his Denon X4200W and playing Blu-ray disc with the master volume set to 0 dB. Everything does seem to sound correct, but other sources don't all seem to adhere to the same volume. For example, playing Spotify via his Chromecast, he needs to turn the volume down to about -13 dB, otherwise it is too loud. So we've mentioned reference volume, and Blu-ray discs seem to adhere to it for the most part, but what are the technical specifications of reference volume, and why don't other devices and sources adhere to it? I don't know why they don't adhere to it, but I think that it's just essentially it's an output their base output level is just higher or lower. And we've talked about this oodles of times, but even within the Xbox One, which, when you play the disc, you can set the volume to something and then you turn to the YouTube app and suddenly it's way too loud. And you go to the Hulu app and it's way too quiet. And you go to this other thing and it's, not the same. it's all, within the same device.
Hmm.
The apps have different, base volumes. Why is it like that? Because reference volume isn't a law.
No.
It's just it's a standard by which movies are supposed to be mastered, but nobody else has to master it that way, and that's why commercials are 10 dB louder than the shows they surround, for that exact reason.
Yeah,
So,
reference volume actually came from THX. It used to be referred to as THX reference volume, but it really is only for movies. And I mean, the technical specs are average output level of 85 decibels with peaks in any of the speaker channels as much as 105 decibels, and peaks could go as loud in the dedicated low frequency effects channel as 115 dB. That's the technical specs for THX reference volume, but it's only for movies. So, I mean, he was giving the example of Spotify. That's music. They don't adhere to movie reference volume. It's not something they do. It's very typical for music to be 20 decibels louder than movies, and have peaks that go up as high as 120 dB, because that's as loud as a full-on rock concert in a stadium might get, is 120. And some people are like, I must have my home experience be just as loud as the actual rock concert, where my ears are literally ringing afterwards. So yeah, it's not a law. It's only for movies. That's about it. Now, the solution there is if you use a separate device for each source that you're going to, your AV receiver has the input offset. It'll be part of the volume settings where you can increase or decrease a given input an amount so that it isn't wildly louder or quieter than the rest of your sources. But if you're using one source like an Apple TV 4K or an Xbox to play multiple different sources, each source might be at a different volume level.
Right. Audyssey offers dynamic EQ and dynamic volume, and we've described how dynamic EQ aims to keep all the frequencies audible when you lower the master volume. But for a case like Spotify vs Chromecast, isn't it actually boosting the bass too much, since to get the average volume level down to 85 dB to begin with, he has to lower the master volume. Do these different volume levels between your devices and sources not present a challenge for using dynamic EQ? And also, what happens if you turn the master volume above 0 dB? Does dynamic EQ do anything to the signal at that point? Above 0 dB, it does nothing. It should do nothing.
Yeah.
But for the other things, you could make, I mean, I don't really know exactly how Audyssey would work with something whose volume isn't doing anything, but as you lower the volume is higher than what you expect it to be, and lowering it. I have not noticed subjectively that when something tends to be loud, I lower the volume and suddenly the bass is way too high, which is what you're suggesting. Or vice versa. If something's too quiet and I raise the volume, it's now I have no bass. It seems to still work pretty well, keeping things all even within what's going on there. And that's probably because what it's doing is not as dramatic as people tend to think it is.
It only aims to keep things audible. So I mean, if you turn something way down, then the bass just being audible is going to be significantly higher in sound pressure level than other frequencies if you've turned the volume level way down. But I mean, this is exactly what the reference level offset within dynamic EQ is for. For music sources where it is common for them to be 5, 10, 15 decibels louder than movie reference level, that's exactly what the reference level offset in dynamic EQ is for. That allows you to make it so that at the 5, 10, or 15 setting for the reference level offset, it's saying if I turn it down to 5, it doesn't do anything until I get below 5. Or if I set it to 10, it doesn't do anything until I get below -10 on the master volume, or 15. Nothing until I get below -15. So that's what it's for, is for music sources. And again, if you combine that with the input volume level of the AV receiver, you can sort of even this out, with the caveat being different sources on the same piece of hardware, if they're different volume levels.
Still going on. I forgot.
I know.
His name.
He had a ton of questions. I'm like, we may as well just get through them because we cleared out our list last week.
I mean, we're down to H. Okay. Anyways, we sometimes use the words or abbreviations volume, dB, and SPL interchangeably. Are they technically different things? SPL is sound pressure level. That's the pressure of the air moving, against your eardrum or something. dB is a measure of that.
Right. So I mean,
SPL.
decibels is just a scale. It is just a logarithmic scale. Technically, every time we talk about decibels in reference to audio, how loud audio is, we should be saying decibels SPL, because dB should always be followed by what it is that you're talking about. dB just means this logarithmic scale. It just stands for decibels. So yeah, we should technically be saying dB SPL, but we shorten it because we're just talking about audio.
Everybody knows what
and
we're talking
volume
about.
is, I mean, yeah, that's...
Volume is just subjective. It's just your subjective. A lot of times you're saying, oh, the volume is too high.
So
that's not a measure.
You are measuring the volume level of audio in decibels SPL, SPL standing for sound pressure level.
So if he goes to the settings in his den and goes to the audio section, there's an adjustment called subwoofer level. Simply turning it from off to on makes his bass way louder. He didn't touch the associated slider. He left at a default 0 dB. So why does bass get so much louder just by turning the setting to on? Audio section is
yes. So this is the thing that is input by input and allows you to have a different subwoofer level versus the global trim level that was set with your manual speaker settings or set during Audyssey auto setup. I will almost guarantee, because this is the only way this would be what he's describing, that your trim level for your subwoofer in like your speaker settings must be at a negative number. So when you did your Audyssey auto setup, or if you manually set the trim level for your subwoofer, it must be at a negative number. Once you just turn this on and it goes to 0 dB, that would be higher than the negative number that's set in your global trim, but this overrides it only for the input that you're on when you make this setting. So that would be the explanation.
Okay, we're up to
I
Jay.
know. Two more. We're almost done.
Scroll up to the top here. Luke is his name. Going back down to Jay. Luke. That's all right. That's what we're here for. We're on Jay, right? Yeah. All right. He'd like to add a compact subwoofer in his kitchen where he uses a pair of KEF Q150 speakers. He's got space that's basically a 1-foot cube, but if the sub could be actually flatter, that would work nicely for his space. Any suggestions? A kitchen with a 1-foot cube.
Although he said it's fine
subwoofer.
If like the depth and width is more than 1 foot, but it can't be more than 1 foot high. That was the only real restriction.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
There used to be like a Sunfire one that was like a 1-foot cube. I think if I remember correctly, way back in the day, thing was like $2,000 and had like a ridiculously large amp in it in order to try to do something with it. But yeah, I think what you really are looking for here is just a bass module, essentially. Yeah. And I don't know, Rob, what you got?
So I'm going to point you over to Monoprice, where they have their SSW subwoofers. They have an 8-inch version, they have a 10-inch version, and they have a 12-inch version. Of course, they go up in physical size, so get the one that physically fits. But the 12-inch version genuinely plays down to about 30 hertz, which for music... I shouldn't have to go much lower than that for music. So yeah, these are a nice, very flat setup. You can actually wall mount them even if you want to, like kind of flat against the wall. They've got brackets that go up there. But yeah, the SSW 8, 10, or 12 from Monoprice. These are basically clones of Dayton Audio, had some very similar ones, but Parts Express only sells the 10-inch version at a higher price than the Monoprice 10-inch version. So there's not much reason to go elsewhere than Monoprice for this.
Yes, is there some PC software that would let him see the frequent response of his music file so that he can objectively know the lowest frequency in that piece of music? Well, I used to edit the podcast. Will do everything. I don't know how to do this exactly, but Audyssey. It's
Audacity.
Audacity.
Yeah.
Audacity. I've been saying Audyssey so many times it just comes out. Audacity is the free software that you can download, and it should be able to do whatever you need.
It can.
As far as audio is concerned.
So you would import the music file into Audacity, then you would highlight the section of the music that you want to see the frequency range of that, and then you would just click the Analyze tab at the top and say Plot Spectrum. And it will show you all the frequencies and how loud each of those frequencies get in a graph for whatever section you've highlighted of that audio file. Analyze Plot Spectrum.
Yeah. All right. Finally on to a different person here. Dan. Dan is using a 65-inch Sony Z9D. He heard us mention that some Sony displays have issues with Dolby Vision. Which models are affected? Would it be better to just stick with the HDR10 on his Z9D, or I'm sorry, Z9D?
It is for me.
So that Rob understands.
Even I say Z9D because I know that's what people will say.
I like saying H though. I do.
I don't say H. That's a UK thing.
Australia. H was all the rage. I love saying H. I feel like I'm insulting somebody every time I say it. I love it.
So it's pretty much only the Sony OLEDs that have the Dolby Vision issue where everything just looks too dark all the time. Their LCD TVs don't seem to have this problem with Dolby Vision. So your Z9D is fine. Mine is, as far as Dolby Vision goes.
So he's considering a screen size upgrade to 77 or 75 inches. He's currently got a 65. When he got his Z9D, he felt it was the very best display he could find at the time. He continued to look at other displays since, but as far as LCD TV goes, he doesn't think he's seen anything that looks better. Would we agree with that, or is there a current LCD TV that is an obvious upgrade these days? And then, of course, there is OLED. He hasn't been able to tell a clear winner between Sony or LG there, So what would be our top pick for a 77 or 75-inch TV to replace his Z9D? Well, OLED.
Yeah, a 77-inch OLED for sure.
OLED would be the only upgrade. The Sony's and the Samsung's LCDs are very, very good. I think the Sony's unless you're a gamer, seem to be the creme de la creme of LCD TVs these days. But OLED is just a better technology well, not every way, but in many ways. It
just looks better. Yeah. So gaming is the big thing where there are differences for sure. The Z9D was not a bad gaming display, but I mean its input lag was, I think, over 40 milliseconds, and now we're down into single digits. And of course, being as old as it is, it doesn't have variable refresh rate or the ability to show 4K at 120 hertz. It just doesn't have the input for that. So if you're a hardcore gamer and you want the fastest refresh rate and variable refresh rate and the lowest input lag, there are displays that are objectively superior to the Z9D now in that way. But in terms of performance for movies, I agree with you. I don't think anything has really gotten better because it was the only one Sony ever made with the full master backlight display where they had like 800 local dimming zones, which is like, that's as much as anybody has ever gone up to, and nobody has ever surpassed it. So yeah, on that front, I don't think there's anything that really looks significantly better even today, all these years later. But OLED can look better. The only thing, of course, is you won't have 3D anymore. That was the reason I've still got a Z9D, is that it is the last one that can do all the things 4K and HDR and 3D, but just not the gaming side of it, with variable refresh rates. So yeah, I would get a C9 77-inch OLED. They are down to $4,000 now, which is still a lot of money, but for a 77-inch OLED, that's pretty good. And the C9, in my opinion, is superior to the new C10, the CX. The C9 supports every form of audio. It has the full bandwidth for HDMI 2.1, whereas there's been a downgrade in the bandwidth on the C10, and it doesn't support DTS audio of any kind anymore on the C10, and picture quality-wise, they're the same. So I'd go grab a C9 right now.
So his speaker setup is 5.2.2 using all DefTech Mythos speakers plus a pair of in-ceiling top middles and dual Velodyne 10-inch DD plus subwoofers, which are very nice subwoofers. He completely loves it, and he really enjoys Atmos. His couch is quite close to the back wall, so he doesn't have any physical space for surround backs and top rears or rear heights when it makes sense. He could add top fronts exactly where Dolby says they should go. He has no issues with adding another pair of in-ceiling speakers, but we don't ever seem to talk about the combo of top fronts and top middles. Would it be worth it to have 4 overhead speakers? I want to say yes, but I really can't.
I mean,
as somebody who has top fronts and top middles.
You have front heights
and
top middles, yeah.
Front heights and top middles. I will tell you that I don't see the value of having top fronts or front heights or whatever they are. I have never, in all of my experiences with these speakers, pointed at them and said they did a thing. They could be not playing at all, and I would not know. I assume they are not, because I mean, I know they make sound because whenever Audyssey does its test, it makes a little ping sound, but I have never heard them play a thing.
So I still like to have 4 overheads if we're going to have overheads. Now, the reason we don't talk about top fronts and top middles as a combo is because that is not an available option in AV receivers. In AV receivers, for whatever reason, they've set up the scheme where the names have to be like a gap in between. So you can have front heights plus top middles, or top fronts plus top rears, or top middles plus rear heights, but you can't do the 2 positions that are right next to each other and label them as top middles and top fronts. However, if you have them, he says he can put them ideally where Dolby says to put them, which is a 45-degree elevation angle. Well, you'll notice that you are allowed to have front heights or top fronts at a 45-degree elevation angle. They overlap at that particular elevation angle of 45 degrees. So you can label them as front heights. They will still act just like top fronts. And I would say go for it because I always like to have 4.
And when you experience them, I would like to hear your experience and see if it differs from mine, because maybe I'm doing it wrong. I am considering just getting rid of my surround back speakers and eventually going with front heights, rear heights, and top middles once I get a receiver that can do all that. Because I can just take those speakers and move them up. I was just looking at it and going, I bet I could do that. Anyways, just some comments from him, I guess. We're now along to the comment section of his question. Even though his DefTech Mythos towers can play lower, he settled on using them. He settled on setting them to small with an 80 hertz crossover because we cannot say anything different. That's all we say. And his Sony 5000 ES receiver doesn't provide any option for LPF over LFE, so it's always set to 120 hertz. And even though it has 2 subwoofer outputs, they were just an internal Y splitter, so he has been sending a mono signal all along. He measured and through sheer trial and error created his own dual subwoofer calibration so they were as uniform as possible prior to running auto setup. The surprise, all of that was before listening to our advice. Wow, that is a surprise. But now that he's read Rob's 12-step guide to setting up dual subwoofers, great minds think alike, I guess. What we recommend seems to be in perfect alignment with what he discovered on his own.
And that is as it should be.
Stop copying us.
that is how we arrived at these descriptions as well. It should work. That's why we recommend doing it. And if you found it through trial and error, so much the better. It should stand up to trial. That's the whole point. You should be able to experiment with this and go,
works.
this is repeatable and demonstrable, and that's why we say to do it. So yay.
All right. Good job. JR, as a reminder, JR purchased a used setup that includes 6.1 Rotel Pre-Pro, a 5-channel Rotel amp, and a 5.1 set of B&W CDM series speakers and sub. I don't remember what we said. I do remember keeping the amp was part of it and maybe not anything else. As we suggested, he ditched the Rotel Pre-Pro and used his Denon 3310 CI instead. While the Rotel did sound nice for 2-channel listening, it had too many shortcomings with no HDMI, no remote. The seller had lost it, and no lossless audio support. He got everything connected and ran Audyssey Multi-QXT. Unsurprisingly, it said his B&W front tower speakers too large, so we followed our advice and manually set them to small with an 8 hertz crossover. The result was muddy mid-bass performance, and making some slight adjustments to the subwoofer didn't help. So we started playing with the crossover setting, and through trial and error, setting the front speakers to 60 hertz sounded best, 40 hertz didn't sound as good, and the higher crossover frequencies didn't sound as good. So is there some magical formula for choosing the crossover frequency? Is he correct in his assumption that the reason 60 hertz sounded best was because the B&W towers are better at reproducing 80 hertz than the subwoofer is? No.
The last part, no. The towers are not just better at reproducing 80 hertz than your sub. That's not the reason.
What's almost certainly the case is whatever is happening at that 80 hertz crossover area, something funky.
I mean, he has a single subwoofer. It's not dual subwoofers. So having some sort of resonant frequency or just a hump at your particular seat for where the sub is placed, that the relationship there has resulted. I mean, he described it as a bit muddy sounding, so I would assume it's probably a hump as opposed to a dip. But yeah, that is almost entirely the reason why it would sound that way. Now, doing, in your case, for a single listening position, a subwoofer crawl might be very helpful. Now, as I recall, he had done one before and wound up with his, I'm pretty sure he had the Mirage speakers, a Mirage sub, where he ended up moving his Mirage subwoofer to the side of his room instead of the front, because via a subwoofer crawl, he found that to be the best location. But this B&W subwoofer that he just got is more capable than his old Mirage sub. Now, Should that change 80 hertz a whole bunch? Probably not, because it's not as though the Mirage couldn't play 80 hertz. But
Right.
try another subwoofer crawl. This is by no means out of the realm of possibility. That could be part of it. But yeah.
So what Rob's saying is basically the subwoofer itself, where it's located in your room, is interacting with your room in such a way so that the 80 hertz area is boomy.
Yeah.
And that's giving you your muddiness. So by changing your crossover, you're able to take that bass out of the sub, put it back into the speakers, and it's not quite as bad. Is that wrong? I mean, if it sounds good to you now,
I mean,
fine.
I am
but Rob's right.
always a fan, if you're willing to take the time to do so, of playing individual sweeps through one speaker at a time. I'm a fan of doing that so that you can see how linearly the speaker plays by itself, first of all. And sometimes you'll discover you lucked out, and where your front left speaker is in your particular seat, it can play down to like 30 hertz and sound linear. I mean, it happens. It's completely possible. And then seeing how the integration of that one speaker with your subwoofer, how that sounds, and trying to get that to sound later. And absolutely, it can be the case where sometimes a higher or lower crossover frequency gives you the result that you're after, which is the most linear response you can get from top to bottom. 80 hertz is a very good starting point. It's usually what works. It is not always the very best choice if you're willing to
especially
go
when you're only using one sub.
Exactly.
If you're only using one sub, you're introducing a whole bunch of stuff. If you put a second sub in this room and place them correctly, I guess 80 hertz would have sounded just fine. So since he will be upgrading to a 4K HDR display at some point in the not too distant future, an AV receiver or processor upgrade will go along with that. Would Audyssey Multi-Q-XT32 do a better job than the version he has in his 3310, or would he get better performance with better internals and more pure sound by getting a Rotel or Parasound processor? I don't think Rotel has any room correction, do they?
I'm not sure about room correction. They do have processors now that have full 4K HDR, HDMI inputs, and that. But yes,
Parasound, I think, does have some sort of their own room correction thing, if I remember correctly. But no, the better internals and more pure sound. I don't. That's just marketing.
Yeah,
that's
he's and I mean, very understandably, you are far from being alone in having been convinced of this. The higher price and the smaller crowd that is marketed to that it must be superior.
Right.
That's the only way it could exist. How could they charge this much if it weren't better? Well, it's actually kind of easy through marketing to do that sort of thing. No, I would completely. I don't think you're gonna hear a world difference between Multi-Q XT and XT32 just inherently. They're not aiming for wildly different targets or anything like that. So that's not going to be the reason. But yeah, there are certainly advances that have been made since your 3310 Ci. I mean, the newest Denons that just got announced, you might be a great candidate for their preamplifier mode, where they're just like, yeah, we just turn off the internal amplifiers completely, give you the full 4-volt headroom on the pre-outs, and you can drive that Rotel amp that you have all day long with exceedingly low noise. If you really don't want any room correction, you turn the thing to direct mode and room correction goes away. Simple as that with a button press. So plus you'd have the option with the newest ones of having 2 completely separate Audyssey configurations that you can switch between with the push of a button. So I would go with a new Denon all day long.
Right. There's very little. I mean, if you're not gonna, if you really want to go, you're like, oh, I want the best possible, internals or purest sound or whatever. I mean, you're really not going from a Denon or a Marantz or a Yamaha to a, boutique processor. You're really going from that to like a Trinoff. You know what I mean? You're going to a processor that can do 32 speakers all at the same time.
Or you could go to the monoprice, the monoprice, the HTP one, a mere $4,000.
So I mean, if you really want to spend money, we can help you spend money. That's not the problem. But the room correction, I think, makes a pretty significant difference for most people. Not everybody. I mean, if you have a professionally designed room and blah blah blah, maybe you don't need as much room correction as everybody else, but you still need some. And going to a processor that doesn't have any or has an inferior version than the others, there are other capable ones out there. I mean, it's not only Audyssey. The Dirac
Definitely.
When you can find that, and the Wipeout with the Yamaha are both perfectly fine. It's just that Audyssey and Marantz and Denon are both effective and cheap. So, I mean, it's hard for us to recommend much else. If you really want something that's, got more power and more options, well, then you go to the Monolith, and then past that, you go to the Trinos. But you don't go to a Rotel. I'm sorry. You don't. You're just buying, a faceplate. Just go to a, thrift store and scrape the Rotel thing off of something and put it on there. Aaron is turning a room in his basement into a dedicated home theater. The only opening is into the hallway, and he will be adding a door. So this will be an enclosed 14-foot long by 15-foot wide by 9-foot tall room. It's not quite a perfect rectangle inside, and there are some soffits on the back wall, but it's pretty close, a little under 1,900 cubic feet in total. How tight does the seal need to be around the door to allow the room to be pressurized with bass? The normal gap on our door would act as the air return for this room, so completely sealing up would mean a much bigger reno to address HVAC. No. The door is fine. There's going to be some leak. You have to have a return there. Do not make a, you can only last in here for like an hour before you pass out from lack of oxygen. You don't need that. The door is fine. There will be some leakage. It's fine, but you need to have an air return down there. So, the death doesn't happen.
Imagine we're talking about water leaking out of the room, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a little gap under the door, it's not like a perfect seal. Some water is going to get out. But that versus the door wide open or no door at all, it's not like there's no difference. There is a big difference between door closed and a little gap at the bottom and how much water leaks out of that versus no door at all, right? So that is exactly the type of difference that we're talking about. You can definitely keep the little gap under the door so you aren't doing a huge HVAC reno in addition to all of this.
Right. So we picked up 6 Klipsch reference series speakers at a crazy 80% off sale, $266 total, so you can't beat the price. You got a pair of R28F towers, 2 pair of R15M bookshelf speakers. Upstairs in his wide open living room, he already had a pair of Klipsch Palladium bookshelf speakers. He wants to pick up a center speaker, but should he keep all of the reference series speakers in the theater and get a matching reference series center, or should he move the much more expensive Klipsch Palladium speakers into the theater as his front, left, and right, and then try to find a matching center for those? The Palladium series is discontinued, so whenever he sees any for sale, they're still very expensive. So what do we think? And if he sticks with reference series in his theater, should he consider the higher price reference Premier series center? What does he have currently?
So reference series, he's got 6 of them, but he didn't get a center at the time. And then he's got some Klipsch Palladium, which was their flagship at one point, upstairs. But he's like, well, I could move that pair of Palladiums into the theater and then try to find a Palladium, or I guess it'd be like the Reference 3 series center, which is enormous. That center is so big, it's absolutely ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense for this size of room.
14 by 15 by 9-foot room.
Makes zero sense for this size of room.
It's just...
I would keep
speakers.
his reference series together. That's what because you can easily get yourself a reference series center. That's what I would do. I wouldn't go get a different series. Just stick with the timbre match. Keep it all in the same series. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, you don't need massive Klipsch speakers for your 14 by 15 by 9-foot room. You'll be putting, less than half a watt in them. At reference volume, practically. I mean, it's just ridiculously large. So, I like this. I don't see why we need to spend a whole bunch of money to try to match these reference speakers. Keep them upstairs in your, or whatever you have them. Put them in the biggest room you got in your house.
The Palladiums, you mean?
Yeah. You could definitely fill that space.
Oh, I would keep the much less expensive. So, reference series is like Klipsch's entry level because the naming is weird. But I would keep those all together in your theater. Get a nice, inexpensive, easily affordable, easy to find reference series center.
Okay. He plans to sit 8 feet away from the front wall of his room, leaving 6 feet behind him. And again, the room is 15 feet wide. Does it make sense to go for a full 7.2.4 configuration? No.
The room's bigger than mine. Sure.
You're a psycho.
I know.
So he's going to have 6 feet behind him. Yes. Okay. There is no reason why you couldn't do 7.2.4.
Agreed.
You can do that.
You can do it.
I don't think you should. But you could.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm going to leave that. I mean, there's nothing that says that you can't do it.
Right.
There's enough space behind you to put surround backs.
Yeah.
There's enough space above you because it's 9 feet. But then at 9 feet, the top rears are going to be awfully close to the surround backs. That's going to be the case. But you can cheat them forward a little bit,
sure
and,
can.
based on the angles and stuff like that.
And there's a definite difference in height, for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
So yes, you can do it.
Yep.
I would start with 5.2.4, and then I would, just stop there.
Try some surround backs and see if you like them.
Or just stop there. You can do that too. He would like to have a 4-seat setup, which would mean the 2 outside seats are at a fairly wide angle, and with the front wall only 8 feet away. Does it make sense to go with a projection setup, or should you just get a 75 or 85-inch flat panel? He's only 8 feet away
from the front wall, no less. So a flat panel would be at least 6 inches closer than the wall itself. And if you put it on like one of those 3-in-1 stands, you could have it a foot or a foot and a half closer to you if you wanted to, and it would still look really slick. It would still look like it's mounted.
Yeah, I like going with the flat panel here.
For this distance, yeah.
For this distance, I mean, basically, if I had a flat panel and it was sitting a foot or so, 75-inch, 85-inch flat panel, and it was sitting a foot and a half, maybe in front of where my current, front wall is, I don't think the viewing angles would be significantly different than my 90, whatever it is.
I mean,
22-inch
a 77-inch OLED from 7 feet away. That's real nice. And wide viewing angles.
He really likes the TCL 6 Series TVs that he has upstairs. He would strongly consider a 75-inch 6 Series or 8 Series or the brand new 85-inch Vizio P Quantum X. What do we think we should get for his display? I think all of those are good ideas.
Those are all very nice displays.
Yeah.
I think you should get a 77-inch OLED, though. That's what I think. That's I really think. I mean, he's building a whole dedicated theater. He can black this thing out. He's going whole hog on the audio 7.2.4. I'm like, why not go whole hog on the display? Nothing's going to look better than an OLED in here. And if you're worried about the wide viewing angles, nothing's going to look better than an OLED for that. So, yeah, 77-inch OLED on a 3-in-1 stand so that it is 1 foot in front of your 8 foot away front wall.
So he's heard us recommend the Boston Acoustics Soundware 4.5 from Accessories for Less for Atmos speakers. Those could actually mount easily on the soffit at the back of his room. He already owns some Boston Acoustic bookshelf speakers. Could he mount those as front heights? I'll just continue reading because this question goes on. He also already owns a pair of Polk in-wall speakers. They are rectangles, not circles. He isn't sure if he wants to put any large holes in the ceiling. So what do we think is the best approach for Atmos speakers in the setup? And does it matter if there are slightly different distances? Will Audyssey correct for that? Are we still at the guy with the clips?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the problem with clips is how efficient they are. They're just like stupid efficient, which is great in that you can play them very loud with very little power. But what ends up happening is level matching between them and other speakers tends to be problematic because you have to put so little power into them and so much more power into something else that getting the level match can be problematic.
But
now,
with all distances as short as they are in this setup,
it should be fine. Now, timbre matching is also probably not going to be an issue here as well. But again, these are Atmos speakers.
Atmos speakers. Yeah.
I'm telling you things that you may want to consider for why you might want to just stick with clips all the way around. Now, if it's too expensive or it's not what you want, that's fine. But be warned that if you put your speaker, you put your room correction on and the auto setup, and it sets all the clip speakers to -12 and all the overhead speakers to +12. It could not level match. It could not get them close enough to each other.
I don't actually think that'll happen in this setup though. With these short distances, I don't think that'll be the case.
As long as you're using whatever you're going to put overhead as just overheads, and there are physically close, fairly close to you, then I think it should be fine. Level matching, again, not level matching, timbre matching would be problematic but we're talking about Atmos speakers, and no one really cares.
Yeah,
So
I'm in favor
more,
of doing this as in the room as opposed to making any big holes. I'm definitely in favor of that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, a pair of Boston Acoustics bookshelf speakers mounted high up on your front wall in the front wall to ceiling corner there, acting as your front heights, and some Soundware 4.5s mounted to the soffit behind you. I have very little problem with that. If you do decide that you want to keep it all Klipsch, Klipsch has in the reference series some of those wedge-shaped speakers, which they call Atmos modules, right? They can be the up-firing ones sitting on top of your speakers, but you'll notice in their own description of them, they're like, you can also just mount these on the wall and use them as angled height speakers. Right. That is totally doable, so that is the other option to go.
Yeah. So he asked which subwoofers. He can put them at the midpoints of the front and back wall. Any reason to go bigger than the PB1000? It's 1,900 square feet, right? Cubic feet, right? Yeah, I mean, PB1000s would be fine in this room.
Oh,
I think.
yeah.
I mean, you could go. I would still build the box. I mean, it sounds like you're going to have plenty of space in here, but I would still build the box. And when we say that, remember, we're talking about getting some cardboard, physically creating a taped together structure that is the size of what a PB1000 is.
Mm-hmm.
PB1000 is big. It's not the biggest. It's not the most massive, but it is quite large. And you may just want to spend a little bit extra money and go to SB2000.
Right.
I guess. Yeah. That's Pro now, right?
Yeah, it would be SB2000 Pro now, for the sealed box version.
Yeah, it would give you a much smaller footprint.
Mm-hmm. Much.
But it would cost more. But
yeah.
I think the PB1000s, as far as filling the room with bass, would be fine.
In terms of output and extension, there's no reason to go beyond that. The only reason would be if they are physically too large and you need a more capable but sealed and physically smaller sub. Then you'd have to pay a bit more to get that.
All right. He was considering the Denon X6500H for the receiver, but he already has a Lexicon RV8 receiver that isn't being used at the moment. You should sell that. Pay for all this other stuff. It could serve as an external amp, so he could save a bit and get the X4500H instead. Then which speaker should he power with his Lexicon? You have Klipsch speakers.
and very short distances between all of your speakers.
In the history, like if you added all the power that you ever put into them over the course of a year and had asked for it all at once, you would still not need an external amplifier. As far as I'm concerned.
The only reason is he's saying like the X4500H has 9 amplifiers built in. If he wants 11 speakers, then he needs some kind of external amp. You absolutely
sell that Lexicon so fast, dude. It would be on Audio Gone, right? It would be gone on Audio Gone already. I would have gotten rid of it. I'd buy a Dayton Audio 2-channel, the smallest possible 10-watt amp like they sell.
And power your rear heights with those.
Rear heights with that
won't matter. I mean, if you do keep the Lexicon and use it as an external amp, yes, you absolutely can. There's no technical reason why you can't use it as a 2-channel or more.
There's no objective reason why you need to, but there's no technical reason why you can't.
But yes, given your tiny distances and the efficiency of all your main speakers, it really doesn't matter which ones you choose. In this setup, it doesn't matter which ones you choose because any amplifier connected to any of the speakers in your setup will be perfectly fine.
If you don't believe us, feel free to buy the receiver first, connect everything to it, and then, except for the 2 channels that you can't do, and then unconnect everything and put it all in the Lexicon and tell us that you can hear a difference, and we'll tell you that you're just.
But I do agree with getting the X4500 instead of the X6500 because it's like even at Accessories for Less, it's like a $600 or $700 difference. So by all means, save that money, and even if it means buying a $100 2-channel amp to add to the 4500, you're still way ahead in total price.
Lastly, he asks, how does he determine what room treatments he will need? He will have a thick rug over vinyl tile flooring. The back wall. And part of the back wall has bookshelves along it, but he isn't exactly sure what else he needs. So, generally speaking, first reflection points, which is if you run a mirror, if you sit in the main seat and you run a mirror along the wall where you see your
side walls,
the side walls, the front left, if it's a left wall, When you see your left speaker, that's the first reflection point. Same thing on the right wall. You see your right speaker in the mirror. That's where your first reflection point is. You put an absorption panel there. You put absorption panels on the back wall where there's not a bookshelf. You put absorption panel on the front wall behind the speakers, and then everywhere else.
I mean,
but that's where you start. I mean, is it as much as possible?
I think he can benefit from corner bass trapping. That's
Sure.
Largely about that crossover region between your speakers and dual subwoofers. You're going to have a very nice, uniform, even linear bass response once you've positioned the subs the way you say, middle of the front wall, middle of the back wall, and then run your room correction. But in that crossover region is where small rooms like this can have some bass buildup. So corner bass traps, it seems like this is a dedicated room to it. I'm all in favor of that. The general rule of thumb is that you're going for about 30% of the total surface area. So all 6 surfaces in your room, about 30% of that covered in absorption of some kind. But once you have, if you do all 4 corners and then a couple of panels on each side wall, couple of panels on the back wall, and panels behind each of your speakers, that gets you pretty close to that with the full rug over your floor. It gets you kind of close to there. The last bit is you might want to do some measurements after that to see if decay times in your upper mid-range and treble actually get longer than the rest of the mid-range. If they do, that's an indication you could benefit from having some diffusion. And a great place to put diffusion is on the rear sections of your sidewalls, because the front sections of your sidewalls will be your first reflection points where absorption goes. So the rear sections of your sidewalls and the ceiling is where diffusion can be very, very effective. And that, like, going beyond 50% of the surface is covered, 30% in absorption, 20% in diffusion. If you have to do more than that, you've got serious problems that I wouldn't expect in a rectangular room.
All right, that's going to be it for this week. Who do we have left?
We have one question from Infinite Gary. We have a question from Tate L. and one from RD. That's it.
All right. I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank our 121 patrons over at patreon.com, as well as their notes of gratitude from John, Luke, Dan, and Tate. Thank you.
So patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, a voluntary subscription, if you please. 121 patrons over there, so thank you very much for that. Anyone who'd like to make a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal. Come to our website, avrant.com, and on the right-hand side it says Support AVRant. That'll take you to PayPal. And then thank you to John, Luke, Dan, and Tate for your notes of gratitude. Thank you to everybody listening, and thanks so much for continuing to send in questions to this podcast.
For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.